Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Explain This. I'm with the star of the show, Robin Riddle. Robin, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Are you ready for this?
I am so ready for this.
I'm ready. I'm ready to understand this better.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of it. I've seen it. I can pronounce it, I think. But I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
And that is APOE.
Yeah.
Did I say that? APOE.
Yeah, you did.
What is this?
Okay. So APOE is a abbreviation that stands for alpha-lipoprotein E.
Okay.
So this is a protein that's involved in the metabolism and transport of cholesterol and fats in the body.
Say that one more time.
APOE, alpha-lipoprotein E. It is a protein that's involved in metabolizing and transporting cholesterol and fat in the body.
Got it. Because we need cholesterol, we need fat.
Mm-hmm, and we got to move them around in the body.
Okay.
So the APOE gene is what provides the instructions to the body for making the protein.
Interesting. Instructions.
Yes.
Okay. The blueprint.
Okay. The blueprint.
There we go.
So in the brain specifically, APOE is functioning by supporting astrocytes, which are known as the helper cells in the brain, with repair. It supplies nutrients. APOE helps to regulate energy and storage in brain cells. So we see a lot of function of APOE in the brain, and we see a lot of function in the liver. Those are the two big areas that it expresses more.
Okay, so we all have APOE.
We all have the APOE gene.
Okay.
And we all produce APOE, which is alpha-lipoprotein. So the gene sends the signal to produce the protein.
Got it. Gene and protein.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But there are different variations within that gene. So I won't call them mutations, they're variations. There's different types of APOE genes that we can have and express.
And I'm assuming that there's good, decent, and not so good.
Yeah, and
okay.
we will dive into that next. So the three different subtypes are APOE2, APOE3, and APOE4.
Okay.
You inherit one copy from each parent, and the combo that you have is what your gene expression is. So you can get a 2 from mom and a 3 from dad, and then your APOE will be a 2/3.
Oh, so it's the combination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so there would be a number of different...
There's six possible combinations. So you can be a 2-2, a 2-3, a 2-4,
okay,
a 3-3, a 3-4, or a 4-4.
And that's all depending on your parents and
yes,
what they have.
What your parents had, what they passed to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of a simple way to do it, in terms of like, you don't even have to worry about recessive or...
Nope, it's just one from each. Which one do you get?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so getting into the different types.
Okay.
APOE2 is the least common one. Carrying one copy of APOE2 can reduce your risk for Alzheimer's disease by up to 40%.
By having it.
By having it. So APOE2 is beneficial for Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
But carrying two copies, so to be a 2-2, it actually increases your risk for cardiovascular disease.
So theoretically, both parents have APOE2.
At least one copy of it.
Then you could, because they have two.
Everybody has two,
okay.
And you pass on one.
Okay.
Half your genetics come from mom, half the genetics come from dad. So they pass on one.
Okay.
So if you get a 2 from mom and a 3 from dad,
okay.
You've got a less risk for Alzheimer's disease and neutral risk for cardiovascular disease.
Got it.
But if you get a 2 from mom and a 2 from dad, less risk for Alzheimer's, higher risk for cardiovascular disease.
Got it. Okay.
So again, the protein that it produces is responsible for moving cholesterol. So having a 2-2 increases the risk for cardiovascular disease because it elevates cholesterol, takes in more of it, elevates triglycerides, can elevate LDL levels. It's even been implicated in insulin resistance.
And by elevating, it does that through just transporting more.
It grabs onto more of it and keeps it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So all of this, and I'll say this again and again, knowing what you have and treating it early is very beneficial. APOE3 is the most common genotype to have. It plays a neutral role in Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular disease. So about 50% of the population has APOE3. So 3-3.
So 3-3.
3-3 is neutral.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Would that be a bad thing? Neutral?
No. It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Neither
Just
good nor bad.
Your genes are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
APOE4 is the one that we're going to kind of focus in on a little bit more because this is the one that definitely increases our risks. We have an increased risk for cardiovascular disease and an increased risk for Alzheimer's disease by carrying an APOE4.
Just one of them.
Just one of them.
Okay.
So about 25% of the population carries one copy. 2 to 3% of the population carries 2 copies of 4-4. So 4-4 is the worst combo that you can have.
Interesting.
2 to 3% of the population.
And that means you have risk for Alzheimer's as well as cardiovascular
Yes.
disease.
So individuals with 1 copy of APOE4 are 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. Those with 2 copies, so a 4/4, they are up to 15 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. This is by increasing neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration. The APOE4 decreases the clearance of amyloid plaques in the brain, and amyloid plaques are what are implicated in Alzheimer's disease. So we've got a much higher risk if we carry 4-4. But good news is not everybody that has APOE4 will develop Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease can still happen even if you don't have APOE4.
Yep.
Genetics are just a piece of it. So it's just a risk factor, not a causative factor.
And I think that's big to understand as we're talking about, some of these genetic lines and we'll go over the test that it's on here in a bit. But it's just important to know so you know what to do for prevention, which is what we're getting to.
Yeah, that's what performance medicine is all about. Know your risks, prevent what you can. So we want to know what your genetics are so then we can work on those modifiable factors. APOE in general, but especially APOE4, works together a lot with your environment and your diet.
Okay.
So there are big modifiable factors if you do have this that we can still help prevent.
Out of curiosity, when you're in a visit with somebody and something like this comes up, a gene shows up that is not a good one.
Yeah.
How do they respond? How do you go about that? Is it kind of what we're talking about right here?
Yeah. So, of course, the response differs from patient to patient. Some people know they've got that risk because, like I said, it also increases the risk for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
A 4-4 up to a 45% increased risk for cardiovascular disease. This is genetic. So these people know that their families have already had this. They'll tell me, everybody in the family's had a heart attack, or every female's had Alzheimer's, all the men have had a heart attack. They already know that things like this run in the family. Typically.
Got it.
If they don't have a strong family history of it, then either they're the first one that's kind of gotten that 4-4 combo just going down the line, or their family has stayed really healthy and modified all those other risk factors to avoid falling into that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then that leads to what are some things that we can do?
What are some things? Yes. So of course, first, know your genetics. We've got to know what you're dealing with to know how aggressive we need to be about it. Having APOE4 means that you have a much slower cholesterol transport system, basically.
Say that one more time.
APOE4 just basically means your cholesterol transport system is slower than someone else's.
Got it. Okay.
So we can create a dangerous buildup of dietary fats, which leads to inflammation and oxidative stress, which leads to Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular disease.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah. Like I said, APOE4, significant interaction with diet and lifestyle. So we need to make modifications within those.
Out of curiosity, does the diet and lifestyle speed it up? Is that what it is doing? Speeds up the transport in a weird way?
What we want to do through diet and lifestyle is take away the excess fats. They're not moving very fast. We don't want to give it extra.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay. So those people that have APOE4, 1 or 2 copies, tend to hyperabsorb cholesterol. So they take in a lot more than someone else would. So we want to limit dietary fat intake. We don't want to have high-fat diets. These are people that would not be good candidates for like a ketogenic type diet.
Interesting.
Or those high-fat diets because they're going to take in so much more of that than someone else would.
So what would they eat? I mean, I know you wouldn't say eat a lot of carbs.
Yeah, no. So a plant-based diet, but a true plant-based. A lot of people hear vegetarian or vegan and it's like, oh, everything's processed carbs. That's basically what they eat. Not that type of vegetarian. True plant-based diets or Mediterranean diets. Mediterranean has tons of benefits for heart health. This is probably one of the reasons why. They just haven't dug into that connection. But anyways, Mediterranean diet, plant-based diet.
Okay.
Lots of fish is good. Low in poultry, low in red meats, just because of the amount of cholesterol that we're getting out of those.
Got it. And this is for the APOE4.
APOE4, yeah.
Okay.
We tend to have higher levels of vascular damage from smoking and alcohol intake whenever you have the APOE4.
Oh, so like the consequences are worse. Okay.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we are not smoking, stop smoking if you have been, and really limit alcohol intake because the body is not going to use and metabolize it the same way. It is going to be more damaging for someone who has the 4.
Interesting.
Yeah. Decreased absorption of omega-3s. So we want to make sure that we're increasing the amount of omega-3s that we're taking in, either through supplementation or through diet. Some studies have even said that it may actually be better to do a krill oil, that it absorbs better.
Okay.
Research has also shown that certain statin drugs do not work well with this genetic mutation.
Okay.
Here at Performance Medicine, we're not huge on statins, but if that's the way that it ends up needing to go or someone has put you on one, research has shown that simvastatin tends to work better with this specific genetic variation.
Yeah, I would imagine like if someone with this gene, I imagine, would be put on a statin more so.
A lot of times,
Does that make sense?
Yes. And a lot of times, most doctors are not looking at this. They don't know this component of it. But you're going to your primary, you've got these cholesterol levels that are, 300 plus. Everybody in the family's always had high cholesterol.
Right.
They stick you on a statin. Knowing if you have this gene can tell us how to change the diet, what medication to use, if we're going to use one, what's going to work better.
And say that statin one more time.
Simvastatin.
Simvastatin. Okay.
Yeah. Encouragingly, one study did find that supplementing with choline, which is a type of vitamin, I've got a podcast on that too, supplementing with choline could potentially help restore more normal functioning in that cholesterol transport and lipid metabolism with the 4.
You don't hear much about choline.
You don't. You do in my podcast. Anti-inflammatory and antioxidant supplements are really helpful as well. So vitamin C, ALA, curcumin, things like that. And then know your labs and monitor your labs. We want to be watching a lipid panel, CRP, insulin, homocysteine, APOE-B is another one that we want to be watching that's involved in this as well. Higher levels of APOE-B increases the risk factors even more.
So APOB is not a gene.
APOB is not a gene. It's alpha lipoprotein B.
Okay.
APOE is alpha lipoprotein E. So
which is a gene and a protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not to confuse you at all. It's all on the Cleveland. So if you are curious about what your levels are, if you think that you might have this mutation, if you know that you have this mutation and want to monitor it, a Cleveland's a great way to do it.
Yep.
Because we're getting more on a Cleveland than just your standard lipid panel. We're getting the APOB, so we know exactly how to monitor that. We're getting the breakdown of the lipids. We're getting, the inflammation and all of that. So again, I always come back to that Cleveland. I absolutely love that Cleveland. It gives us tons of information. But again, it's just genetics. There are things that we can do to help it. I don't know if you've seen in the media recently, but one of the Hemsworth brothers, Chris Hemsworth, I think, Thor. Yeah. He was filming for some.
Yeah, I do remember.
I can't remember what the show is, but they did genetic testing on him and he carries the 4-4. And so he actually, came out about it and has talked about it. I think it's increased people hearing about this because a lot of people don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
So I love that he's been very open about it and he is, stepping back and focusing on his health and his life and kind of taking a break from acting. But he's raised a lot of awareness around this. So people may have heard of it because of that. He does have the worst one. But again, there's a lot of modifiable factors.
Yeah, I think this is going to help a lot of people. And with what Chris Hemsworth is doing as well, is because I feel like this generation, the baby boomers, our generation, we've seen Alzheimer's and like how bad it can be. I think a lot of people are fearful of it. And if you can get out ahead, know your risk factors, and watch the levels that you just mentioned, take some of the vitamins you just mentioned, consider these different diets, it's going to be super helpful.
Yeah. There's a book that we often refer our patients to read. It's called The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Bredesen. It's got great protocols in there. He's actually done research in people who have already had onset of Alzheimer's and dementia and helping to reverse things. So there's, even if it's already started, there's things that you can do to help make that better. But the best time to catch it is when you're young and we haven't gotten there yet, and we can prevent from ever getting there.
Yep.
So,
APOE.
APOE.
You explained it.
Yep.
Guys, this has been Explain This. We'll link in the description below episodes to the Cleveland Heart Panel, as well as the Mediterranean diet. I think would be a good one.
On that one.
I think we did. Yeah. We're going to find them, guys. So look at the description below if you want to dive a bit deeper. But as always, thank y'all for hanging out. Robin, thank you for explaining.
Absolutely.
Guys, we'll see you next time.
Don't go away.